So, Tim, we generally catch up around this time of the year, which is always great. The one thing that has changed demonstrably from this time last year is the appointment of Donald Trump as the President of the United States. From the aviation industry's point of view, how do you sense that election changes the way in which Emirates, say, for example, flies in America and out of America?
I'm not sure it'll be a significant change to what we do in our operating patterns into the United States. I believe that what he is likely to do is strengthen the US economy. And when you get an economy that's strengthening, whether it be in the United States, China, Europe, etc., it's always good for business. And that means that probably we will introduce more activity into the United States, subject to aircraft availability. We'd like to do more now, but we can't because we're hamstrung by fleet size. But I think...
But hang on, can I just pick you up there? You're hamstrung for your fleet size because of an American aircraft manufacturer, Boeing. They're way late with the 777Xs. And so as a result, is that something that Donald Trump can fix for aircraft companies or airlines such as yours?
I think in the administration there will be a concentration on getting the American companies to do the right thing by America. That's clearly in his mantra and everything he says. And I think that Boeing will be they're very focused on getting this problem sorted out. I don't want to elaborate on the history to it because I've been fairly vocal about it in the past, simply because we have 250 aircraft still waiting to be delivered. But I think if they don't perform as well as they should be doing, then I think the administration might be looking at them a little bit more closely to ensure that that Boeing restores itself to being the largest exporter of American products in the American economy, and it restores itself to the quality control issues that they currently face, so they get back to quality produced aircraft, well designed aircraft which have great durability in the fleets of the companies that buy them. And I think that will be very important, in my view, for the President's administration get sorted and bring focus to and help where that is needed. I'm not talking about financial help, but making sure that the way is cleared for them to be able to meet the obligations they have under contract to airlines like us to get back to where they used to be prior to this hiatus that's been going.
Okay, so given his mantra about manufacturing in America, he wants to get more manufacturing in America. The other question is whether, therefore, there could be punitive either tariffs or some other barriers towards Airbus, the other major manufacturer, and whether that, of course, makes it less competitive, especially trying to sell to American airlines.
Well, look, this is uncharted territory, quite honestly. It's a new administration with its own fairly well-defined views. The execution of those, we have to wait and see what happens. At the moment, as I said earlier, it is a global duopoly between Airbus and Boeing. The WTO has taken care of a number of issues between the two companies in the past. I think the focus really has got to be less about what the competition is doing, more about getting their own stable in order, producing the airplanes that people like entities like Emirates want. And I often said, provide the right goods at a good value for money proposition with great durability and supply chain capability, then we would buy these aeroplanes. Concentrate on that. Don't worry about what the Europeans are doing. Don't worry about tariffs and all those kind of things. Just get the aircraft out of the door. And as I said many times, we will buy what you have to offer. After all, that's what we used to do in the past. And our confidence in that company back in the early part of the first decade, when we basically designed the new 777 with the Boeing teams, placed the order that we said we would do, it was in the belief that they would be able to deliver these high-quality aircraft like the 777-300.
So how far are they behind now?
I think they're a few years. To be quite honest.
But that affects your capabilities,
does.
Because if you don't have those, you've got to sweat older aircraft, and therefore potentially refurbish older aircraft. It's costing, and potentially even costing in terms of the flying experience.
We've had to take the old fleet, revitalise them, retain them. By now, the airline should have had about 90 of the 777s. So we're not likely to get the first one until probably the end of next year, beginning of 27. So we can't wait. We have to refresh the interior products because some of them are 10, 15 years old. They've all got to be basically removed and new products going in. So we have little choice in that. To us, that's a cost of $4.5 billion US out of our own cash to deal with this problem. If we didn't do that, our brand would suffer. The travelling public that we carry and regard so strongly would be subjected to lousy products or very old products which are well past their sell-by date. So we've taken that initiative, and on the assumption that they will deliver in the first quarter of 27, late 26, what their ramp-up will be, I'm not altogether sure about. So we have 210 of those aircraft due to come out in the next how many years, I'm not altogether sure. But it has caused us to do that. We have little choice, and we are doing it, and we're very serious about what we're doing. So in comes premium economy, refresh and rebuild of the business class cabins, makeover of the first class cabins, which is only the first stage of what we're doing there. There will be other new first class cabins coming into our older 777s after this is all done, so we're going round again. But it's something we have to do.
Yes. So then does it also mean that you continue to sweat the A380s that Airbus make a little bit longer? You keep them in the air. Given the fact that Airbus has said it's not going to manufacture that aircraft anymore, you previously have said you would prefer it if they were, but other airlines don't want the aircraft. You've taken A350s from them. The first delivery of those has already started to arrive. But obviously it's not enough to make up the shortfall of those 777s.
To the 380 question first, yes, we will keep those flying until the end of the 30s, maybe even the first part of the 40s. It's vital to us. It's probably the most popular aircraft flying today. And you love the A380. Simply because our operating model is a scaled model of some size now. And as our network expands and the hub grows, and we're having a new airport built in the future, probably in the next 8 or 9 years, it'll be ready for operation. The 380 and an aircraft that size is vital to what we do. Question is what happens after that. But it remains, and many of the carriers that said, worst mistake they've ever made, this is a lousy aircraft, they're all flying them seriously hard now, sweating the assets. So, and I think they all realise that in the end, going forward 10 years, if we extrapolate demand as it is today on the basis of 4, 5, 6%, whatever, with slot constraints that we face today in just about all the major cities in the world, that in the end, when the 380 goes from a 500-seater down to a 350-seater, what's going to be left on the table? Difficult one to answer. So yes, we sweat the assets. Fortunately, we have a very good supply chain for the 380 because we knew once it became obsolete in its production that we needed to start storing bits and pieces. So even some of the early aircraft that we dismantled, we took all the spares. They're now sitting in warehouses ready to be used for the future. So we don't really see a problem there. The engines are more difficult to be absolutely clear as to how they're going to go. But at the moment, so far, so good.
So tell me about capacity in airlines internationally right now. Post-COVID, it obviously took a big hit. It's now sort of recovered. The question is whether there is that same demand for flying internationally as there had been pre-COVID, and whether really the problems that you've got with Boeing in particular really mean that you cannot fulfil the demand that's actually coming from the
Well, I can safely say that the demand for travel internationally, long haul, medium long haul, well exceeds the demand that we had prior to COVID. So that's something that people really need to think about. Whether or not it was a COVID effect, that it was a catalyst to unleash these new segments that are coming to market, the quantums that have seriously increased in our shoulder months, we're now full, etc. I don't think Emirates is alone. But because we were one of the first movers to activate our fleet in the middle of COVID, in the belief that it would come bouncing back, as it did, but even we were caught short about the strength of demand in all the segments and in all the routes that we're flying to. It still continues today. Everybody says revenge travel is over, that we're not going to see it. On the contrary, I've never seen anything as strong as, for instance, November of last year, a traditional shoulder month for the airline and for the industry as a whole. We were up at peak levels. In January, some of the days we've had broke all records in terms of cash from sales for forward bookings. More and more people are coming to market. They seem to value, I know there's a question about pricing and who's doing what, etc. They seem to value the product in its entirety. And what Emirates offers, particularly in its premium cabins, the compendium of product is so good that people are saying, you know, we need to do this. Whether or not they were traumatised by what happened in COVID, I think about places like Victoria, which really suffered, and they were locked down for much longer than most, whether that caused a never again type of, and we've got to move, we've got to enjoy, etc. I don't know. It's a difficult one to predict, because even the greatest economists in aviation, with the benefit of 2020 vision, will be able to say, well, that's why it happened. But if you'd asked them to predict what was going to happen in 2021 about what's going on, and nobody would have got that right. Emirates had a hunch, an intuition, only because we've been subjected to huge traumas in our part of the world for many, many years, whether it be 9/11, whether it be wars, etc. And each time when we looked, all the maths were telling us that you can gauge a global or a regional incident in the bounce back in demand, and there is a high correlation where the deeper and the longer the trauma, the bigger the push, the response is. And that's exactly what happened in COVID. It was devastating for the global economy. It went on for a long time. The longer it lasted, we knew at that time that it would come back with a vengeance, and it surely did. So we were prepared for that. The question was, how long would it last? And that's the question that goes on today. But at the moment, we see, during the course of 25, a very robust demand in all the segments that we're looking at. We're not alone. People like Delta have said 25 is going to be one of the golden years for them, etc. So I think the industry, just about all areas and all airlines, are experiencing that.
Because you're now, the fact that you could go to any part of the world with one stop, basically from the United Arab Emirates, from Dubai, is now being replicated from Abu Dhabi, it's being replicated from Qatar, it's being replicated now from Istanbul. The question is whether that has any impact on your operations, on the competition that you now feel.
You know, Ross, I've faced this when Etihad was formed, when Qatar was formed, and they always used to say, is there room for three, and how's this going? I said,
now Turkish, is there room?
And now Turkish is there. And all I've said, and I'd say that what we have done with our operating model, I'm unashamed to say that it has been emulated by others, but hey ho, that's what competition is all about. And the more we've energized and expanded that model, others have come into it. But what that has done is that it's introduced a new quantum of demand. The pie has got much bigger. As you make connections with classic products at an affordable price, and you open city pairs that hitherto had never been able to be connected, watch what happens.
And are you convinced that travellers want to travel 20 hours, 21 hours in one spot? Are you convinced that they are prepared to travel that long haul?
Well, where we've introduced the 380 on Auckland, Dubai, or we've introduced it on the west coast or the east coast of Australia, all the points down here, they are absolutely convinced it is the only way to travel, providing that your design and suite of products that you're presenting to them are good ones. Basically look after them, feed them well, give them lots of content on TV, make the seats comfortable, treat them as human beings, not like cattle, and they'll come to you because that's, and they'd rather do that than go via an intermediate point. We can't fly from Australia to Europe because bilaterally we can't, but we ensure that you can go from Sydney to, I don't know, Vienna on a 380 all the way through. You can go from Melbourne to Glasgow all the way through on a 380. That's well appreciated, and I think the question is really, do the single aisle long haul, the 321 XLR that they're introducing now, will people be prepared to sit in those for up to 9 hours in a single aisle configuration? Time will tell. But in the end, people go for a value for money proposition, ease of travel, and hopefully it's enjoyable at the same time. The more you do of that, the more connections that you introduce, notwithstanding the sort of environmental side of things, the more people will travel. And this defines as part of the major pieces of our operating model. If you connect, if you build, if you make it as seamless as possible, they will come. And that's exactly what's happened. So the more we've reached to second and third level points on our network, connected them with the primary hubs in the world, so the model has scaled and energized and delivered the goods for us. So in answer to the question, the three other carriers, I think Riyadh Air is coming up fairly soon. They're going to be, whether or not they're going to focus on Riyadh and Saudi Arabia initially, but eventually they'll break out and go into what we call the sixth freedom markets. You know, as the planet grows, population grows, demand for air travel continues at 4 to 7%, depending on the segments, the regions that you're flying to. Yeah, you'll see a lot more to come.
So Tim Clark, it is always great to catch up with you, get these insights into the aviation world, and many thanks for your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you.